Welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Namibia. Now, monuments are more than just stone and bronze structures. They are symbols of memory, of identity, and of history. In Namibia, monuments reflect our journey through pre-colonial times, colonialism, as well as the liberation struggle and independence. But as society evolves, so too does the conversation around what we commemorate, who we honor, and how these symbols shape national identity. This morning, we're joined by a Namibian, Dr. Maurice Kudumo, public policy analyst, to unpack the importance of monuments, what they represent, and whether they still hold relevance in today's society. Morokeni, Doctor,
Well, again, None,
how are you doing, Dr. Kudumo?
I'm very fine, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing well too, thank you, Doctor. From a historical perspective, why are monuments important in a country such as Namibia, given our complex history?
Yeah, monuments serve as tangible links to the past. They preserve history, culture, and collective memory of events and sacrifices. And therefore, they are important for future generations and have educational and cultural significance.
Against the backdrop of that overview, Doctor, I'd like us to go slightly deeper. How do monuments contribute to the shaping of our national identity, particularly after independence on the 21st of March, 1990?
Yeah, national identity is shaped by understanding the past. And if we understand this past, it helps us to develop a common identity. In the case of Namibia, you are talking about the past that was characterized by the policy of apartheid.
Mm.
And apartheid was about separate development in all facets of life. And therefore, before you talk about unity and diversity, or one Namibia, one nation, you need to understand that past. And history and monuments is about memories, like I explained. Therefore, the common identity in the context of Namibia needs to be sensitive towards political, cultural, linguistic, and other diversities.
Mm.
If you don't pay attention to this, you will find resistance from those who feel excluded, as it was the case with apartheid. So, national identity can only be sustained if you understand the past.
Such an important matter to ponder on, Doctor. Now, Namibia has monuments such as Inter Alia, the Heroes Acre, the Independence Memorial Museum. What message were these monuments intended to send at the time that they were erected, and how relevant do those messages remain in 2026?
Yeah, I suspect it's about resistance against colonialism and apartheid, as well as the key personalities that were involved in the anti-colonial and struggle for freedom and independence. I suspect this is the message that these monuments would like to convey, especially for future generations who might not have been there, and therefore to create that understanding about the past. And understanding the past is not just about understanding, it is about avoiding making the same mistake.
Now, there has been debate globally, Doctor, about removing some or reinterpreting colonial era statues. We know Namibia is no island, and we have faced similar conversations. What does that tell us about how society engages with history and how we evolve?
Yeah, look, history is always contested. It is sometimes told from power relations. The history of those who are in power sometimes is dominant. But for us historians, what is important in interpreting events is to hear both sides and therefore to make our own conclusions about those events. So, to some extent, yes, history is always contested.
But we're not all historians, Doctor. What would qualify me, for instance, to draw my own conclusion, to draw my own inference about an event, particularly against the backdrop of that common identity that you spoke about earlier?
Yeah, listening and making decisions is not only for historians, it is for every person. Whether, for example, it is in the media, whether it is in a traditional court, you don't just arrive at conclusions. You listen to both sides, you shift the facts, and you can make conclusion what is true and what is not true. So generally, it's not for historians only, but judgments are made by all human beings.
You've already touched on this context, Doctor, but perhaps we can go a step further. Is it fair to say that monuments tell a complete story of our past, or do they at times reflect the political priorities of a particular time?
Yeah, look, you can't rule out power relations. For example, in colonial settings, you will have monuments that reflect the events of the time as well as those that are in power. That's why sometimes you have this removal of some monuments, renaming of streets, and so on, so that you bring about a collective type of history or a collective representation of events. But my view always is I don't think it is necessary to remove some, because then you will forget part of what happened. But actually constructing history in such a manner or monuments in such a manner that it is representative of the collective and not only a selected few and the few that have power in the context of power relations.
Even if that history represents a painful past, Doctor?
Yeah, because history is human activities of the past. We need to understand that. And the reason why we need to understand that is because it shaped the present and it helps us to make better future decisions and to avoid repeating the same mistakes. If it is selective and you take them out, how will those that were not there, the future generations, know about what those individuals or what those events represent? So it is always helpful that it is difficult, it is sensitive, but let's reflect on it, because otherwise then we have selective memory, or we forget about that, and eventually you repeat the same mistakes all the time.
Speaking of the next generation, Doctor, how can younger generations connect with monuments in an age dominated by digital media and social platforms as we know them today?
Yeah, I think we need to, because they are on digital platforms and other platforms. So I think it's important that we digitalize these past events. We create visual realities about them, and we reinterpret and analyze, but like I said, objectively. For example, if we are creative enough and we are investing, some of these monuments must be digitalized. You can even create visual realities as if you are there, but you are looking at it from your home or from your space or from the digital space. I think we just need to be innovative and we need to invest, but we can't ignore it, because if we ignore it, basically you are repeating the same mistake. And I'm always contesting that the conflicts and other problems that we are seeing in the world is because humanity has never learned about the past.
Very well, Doctor. You shared with us your stance earlier that the best way is perhaps not to dismantle and to remove. Should we rather reinterpret and provide additional context if we go by your stance of not removing, of not dismantling?
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm arguing. We need to add, we need to reflect collectively, and because what you have currently is selective memory. It's only certain events, it's only certain personalities. But you need to ensure that you are collective. For example, if you talk about contribution to the liberation struggle, how is a woman or a person in the village who contributed by risking and providing information as well as support in terms of food accommodation to freedom fighters reflected in our history? How is the common person reflected? And how do we make it that the common person is actually reflected? Because it must be our collective memory. So that's actually what I'm arguing, that it doesn't help us to be selective in terms of only good stories, because then we repeat the same mistake because it was not collective enough and so on. I know it's difficult, but that's what we need to do. We need to understand the bad as well as the good.
Doctor, do you have any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, it's just to emphasize that history and monuments are not just symbols. They promote or help us to understand human past events. They shape the present, and they help us in terms of better future decisions and avoid repeating the same mistakes all over and all over. And we need to invest in this, and it needs to be representative.
Mpandu Zonene, Doctor.
Thank you very much.